Oh, that's the. Whatever it is. Oh, good.
I know, it might feel like that. All right. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all here. Thank you very much for coming out this evening. I'm Dr. Alex Richardson. I'm an associate director at the Panelists Institute here at DePauw. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's event in our Courageous Conversations in Ethics series. At the Panelists Institute, our mission is to help people think critically about the ethical dimensions of their lives and to create spaces where real dialogues can happen. Courageous Conversation is, of course, one of those spaces. It's a series designed to bring people together to explore difficult moral questions from different perspectives and corners. Importantly, we aren't hosting debates. They're opportunities to listen, to reflect, and of course, to disagree, but importantly, constructively. We believe that kind of engagement is essential to a healthy democracy and to our shared moral life. Tonight, we'll hear from three guests whose experience sheds light on a quickly growing ethical issue in American culture: online sports gambling. Over the past several years, it's expanded rapidly across the United States, raising some complex questions about fairness, regulation, and social responsibility. Our first panelist, Brianne Duer-Schwall, is a leading expert in gambling policy, government relations, and responsible gaming advocacy. As a founder of her own global consultancy and formerly as a legislative director for the National Council on Problem Gambling, she advises legislators, regulators, and industry leaders all around the world. Our second panelist, Mark Hicks, is the managing director of enforcement at the NCAA, where he leads initiatives related to sports wagering, name, image, and likeness, or NIL, and sports development. Before joining the NCAA, he spent nearly a decade as a teacher and a coach at both the high school and the college levels. Our third, but certainly not least panelist, is David Rebuck, a retired gambling regulator who played a pivotal role in modernizing New Jersey's gaming laws, especially in online gambling and sports betting. After more than 40 years in public service, he now serves as a special advisor in the gaming compliance sector. The conversation tonight will be moderated by our own Dr. Jeff Dunn, director of the Prindle Institute and a professor of philosophy here at DePauw. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming our panel to get the conversation started.
All right, thanks very much, Alex. Good evening, good to see everybody. So I'm Jeff Dunn, director of the Prindle Institute. And so I just wanted to set the scene here a little bit before we jump into our discussion. So a recent academic study, widely cited, examined the most recent Stanley Cup hockey playoffs, as well as the most recent NBA finals. That's right, the one that the Indiana Pacers just lost. The researchers found that on average, viewers of these games saw an online sports gambling ad or logo once every 13 seconds. If you watch any sports, or if you even know anyone who watches any sports, this won't surprise you. Gambling and sports wagering advertising is everywhere right now. But it wasn't always like this. 10 years ago, if you turn on a basketball game or a hockey game or a baseball game or really any game, you wouldn't have seen a single online sports gambling ad. And that's because 10 years ago, it was mostly illegal in the US for us to have that kind of gambling. This all changed in 2018 with a Supreme Court case you might hear about during our discussion, Murphy versus the NCAA. This lawsuit brought by the state of New Jersey challenged the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992, sometimes referred to as PAPSA, which effectively outlawed sports betting nationwide. And in a 6-3 vote, the Supreme Court found that the PAPSA was unconstitutional, which opened the door to legal sports betting in the US. Many states jumped at this opportunity, including Indiana, as did gaming companies such as FanDuel and DraftKings, which you're probably familiar with. Experts estimate the total amount wagered on sports has increased from around $4.6 billion in 2018 to over $150 billion today per year. So there's certainly an appetite for this. In some sense, this is maybe not surprising. Humans have been gambling for as long as there's recorded history, and probably long before that. When I was reading about this, I found that the earliest dice date to around 3000 BCE in Mesopotamia, but there's probably examples that go further back. So there's always been an appetite for gambling. But how should we think about this human desire for gambling when it collides with modern media, sports, and technology? I think that's a really interesting question that we're going to investigate today with our panelists. So I'm really excited to get into the discussion, and the way I want to kind of open this up is just say I gave a really quick overview of the complex world of sports gambling, but it is complicated right now, and I wonder if you just want to each take a chance to say a little about yourself and how your career has intersected with this complex world of sports gambling and where you see that we are today.
Want to go first? Thank you, team. We know each other very well over the years. Mark Deanne, Brian and I have worked together, well, certainly since 2012, Brian on online casino gambling, and Mark, obviously, since the win in the Supreme Court case that I was part of the team arguing, and we won. So again, Dave Rebuck, I'm Assistant Attorney General. I was from the state of New Jersey. I was appointed to be the Director of Gaming Enforcement by then Governor Chris Christie. I worked with Governor Christie on his staff as an attorney. And people wonder, how did New Jersey decide to, and why did it decide to take on the federal government and the leagues and the NCAA in sports wagering? Because as was addressed here, it was illegal. Sports wagering existed in the United States, but it was all underground. It's all illegal. Offshore sites still exist today, as we all know. Some of the common names, Bovada, MyBookie.ag, they're still taking bets here in Indiana. They're still taking bets in New Jersey. So we found ourselves in New Jersey in a very difficult position. We had made a significant investment in our casino industry. We first had casinos in 1978. We're the second state other than Nevada. Casinos in that period of time, from 1978 to 2010, expanded from probably 10 or 20 to over 1,000 in the country. And competition was ripe. And our great experiment in economic development in South Jersey to refurbish and bring Atlantic City back was in danger of collapsing. Casinos were closing, competition was ripe. What were we going to do to salvage jobs, to allow for our casinos to be more competitive? And the first decision was we need to diversify the product offerings from a retail environment to an online environment, because that was very successful in Europe. And that's the way we were going to approach it. And so we did pass a law that allowed for online casino gambling in 2013. And shortly thereafter, we made the decision, with that being live, we're going to take on the federal government, the NCAA, NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and the NFL to legalize sports wagering. And that was a 6-year litigation. Supreme Court finally took the case in December of 2017, and as reported, we won. Within 2 weeks of having that victory, took our first bet. First bet was in a casino. And then the online side of the house came into play and brought their product to the table, which they had already been operating online casino. We went live in August of 2018. And now you have 35 states that have online sports wagering, and 40 states that have some form of sports wagering. And very few have online casino gambling. So there's a whole story behind that. But we'll deal with sports wagering because I know that's why we're here today. But that was 2018. Where we are today, there's more online gambling on sports today than ever before, legally, illegally, and quasi-legally. And it's going to continue to grow in ways where the federal government, for example, is now not opposed to sports wagering. They want to run it themselves. And if you look at, because CFTC, which is the Commodities Future and Trading Commission, they've authorized companies like Kalshi, Polymarket, Crypto.com, Robinhood. They're all taking sports wagering now, but calling it event-based wagering. But you can still bet on the Indiana Pacers tonight on Kalshi if you want to, but it's not sports wagering.
Just want to jump in there real quick, just to make sure everybody's on. So you mentioned legal sports wagering. I think most people know what that is. It's like the FanDuel kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Illegal sports wagering, that makes some sense. And that quasi-legal, these prediction markets is what these are. So it originally made to like bet on things like political outcomes. Now you can use them to bet on sports outcomes, but it's not labeled as gambling. Is that right? Yeah.
Correct. It's not, we'll be in court again, probably be the Supreme Court for another 6 years, but that is correct. And so it's an evolving area. It's a great topic to discuss from ethics because, again, we're in an environment now in our country that in 2018, Dave Rebuck never envisioned to be this way in 2025. And I doubt that anybody in 2018 ever thought that we'd be in a position we are today with the growth of sports wagering, not only through the states, but now with the federal government and prediction markets, and soon the Securities and Exchange Commission taking on companies that are going to be engaged in quasi-sports wagering. So it's mind-blowing to look at from ethics, consumer protect, all these things that you talk about. It's very much in its infancy stage, very much. And where it goes in the future, I guess we'll all find out together, won't we? Sorry for taking too much time.
No, good, yeah. Brand, you want to tell us
I
where
think I'm in the middle, Murphy versus NCI. I got it now. NCI here. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brianne Dorishwal. It's a pleasure to be here. As Dave noted, I've known him my entire career in the problem gambling space. I was the first ever legislative director to address the public health issue of gambling addiction back in 2013 in my home state of Massachusetts. And then this little thing called PASPA happened in 2018, and it flipped gambling and public health on its head. And I called up the executive director for the National Council on Problem Gambling in DC. My husband's also in the military. We had serendipitously gotten orders to DC, and I said, you know, you've been around since the 70s, and we don't have a legislative director. And I'm pretty sure this is going to be the single biggest policy debate to happen around gambling in our nation's history. And I think you should take a gamble on me. And then I guess it worked because I was on a plane. And to date, I've now worked in 47 US states and in 34 countries on this issue, trying to help remedy and figure out how do we balance the business interests with a duty of care or an obligation to customers? And what about the social consequences that inevitably come from legalized gambling, especially mobile gambling? And so Dave and I have been trying to answer a lot of these questions. Sometimes it's easier than others. The truth is the federal government right now doesn't invest in gambling disorder. Of all the addictions, we enjoy zero recognition, zero privilege, and zero funding, leaving this issue solely up to the states, which makes my job a lot harder. It also means that we know a lot less. To put that in comparison, other addictions will receive about 350 times more funding than what states contribute to public health of addiction, and yet it's only 7 times less prevalent. So we are working from an extreme deficit. There are real costs that I'm sure we'll get into. There's a social cost, there's the human cost of all of the suicide rates and implications from addiction. Gambling disorder carries that highest rates of suicide. So I like to say I'm in the business of saving lives. I'm very excited for tonight's discussion. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks. Yes, Hear me okay? Mark Hicks, I work at the NCAA. I've been there almost 20 years. When it comes to sports betting, I'm the least most experienced here of this group. In my role, and I come from, it's essentially a regulatory role at the NCAA. I do work in enforcement. There are a lot of different rules that are regulated in various different departments, but I very much wear a regulatory hat. In my particular area, I have a lot of different focuses, different issues, different sports specific things, but one of those is sports betting. And we've always had somebody dedicated to sports betting going back probably 25 to 30 years. That position was dedicated to sports betting because one day the FBI called. There was a sports match fixing issue, I think in Massachusetts. And the FBI wanted to know who in our office they needed to talk to about sports gambling and match fixing. We didn't have anybody. That was way before me. So they designated an FTE, and that was under, once I became into my role now, that was under my watch. Unfortunately lost that person several years ago to a tragic death. And at that point kind of took on that role myself. Shortly thereafter though, and this is all post PASPA, but shortly thereafter we hired a guy named Charlie Baker, former governor of Massachusetts, as our president. And when he came in, sports betting was at the top of his priority list, one of a couple at the top. And we just so happened in that time period as he got hired, had a major sports wagering integrity issue at the University of Alabama. There was a very public, not so much an NCAA issue, but a very public issue in the state of Iowa where there was geofencing around 2 athletic departments ordered by state government, simplifying, but state government in the state of Iowa. But very, very public. And then shortly thereafter, we had some other kind of sports betting related scandals. And since that time period, all I do, like 99% of my day is spent pretty much on sports betting. Even though I'm housed in enforcement, there's a big part of my role that deals with protection of student athletes from education that we do with some of the folks that Brianne used to work with. It's also policy driven. I spend a lot of time talking to regulators, people like Dave that in his former role. There are a lot of state laws that involve reporting information to the national governing body should they find prohibited bettors, should they have an integrity issue. So having a good relationship with the state regulator is really, really important. And I'm kind of glad I came along post 2018, not pre 2018, because it puts me in a good position to have good working relationships with the regulator. And there's actually a lot of commonality as a regulator, just of our own bylaws, but to be able to understand what the regulator goes through at the state level, I think really makes my job a little bit easier. I would ask though that, when you think about where the NCAA fits in all of this conversation today is, it's a big organization. We all know they regulate, again, a lot of different things. They have championships. Sports betting is just like one small issue that we deal with on a daily basis, but it's a big issue. And one of the things that's happening at the NCAA right now that has nothing to do with sports betting, but it comes to roost is really this idea of what is the national office? What is the NCAA national office responsible for? And there's a trend right now of deregulation, putting a lot more autonomy at the institutional level. In some ways, it's not much different, Dave, than like federal state. It's like where does that power need to live, and what's the role of national regulation versus state regulation? And so we're seeing that, and it often is manifested in terms of like what's the parental role of the NCAA. So we'll talk a little bit about that, especially from moral debate and conversation of. We're going to talk about protecting young people who we know have higher rates of gambling harm. Has to do with brain development. The last person needs to talk about that, but it's what we deal with. Versus changing of rules, making it easier for student athletes to engage in betting, meanwhile facing some integrity issues. So a lot of that's going on, but it really is as much about what's the role of the national office and less about sports betting. It just comes to roost on that topic because it's in front of us right now.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. I think that's I want to come back to that in just a sec here, that idea of whose responsibility is it to sort of protect people? Is it their own responsibility? Is it something else? But I want to start with kind of maybe the main question here and like think about what are the harms, what are the benefits of sports gambling. And Brianna, I want to ask you this actually. So I know you often advocate for tighter restrictions, but I'd like you to put on a different hat. I'm going to ask you, what, if any, are the benefits of legalized sports
I
gambling?
love it. I love it because well, let's put it this way. So I sat for a podcast at the largest gambling conference 2 weeks ago out of Vegas. And you want to know the very first question I got? What's it like to be the most hated person?
Oh, that was going to be my first question.
So, all right, so let's see what kind of benefits I can have. So what are the benefits? There are tax revenues that the states do enjoy from legalizing these products. Consumers should be able to trust and the fairness that they can receive on a legalized, regulated site versus the black market, which I think arguably all of us on the stage would say is too present, and incredibly dangerous. Other benefits, people have choice. There was an argument the week before the biggest gaming conference at an anti-gambling conference, because that's my world. I walk between the two. And there was an argument for a monopoly. There are 2 states that actually run a sports betting monopoly. That would be Oregon and New Hampshire. And I was arguing that that was a bad thing. The consumer was not in any way benefiting from a monopolistic approach to the sports betting market. So while I see many concerning things, predatory things, I would say that's my list of some benefits.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I would say from a league perspective, so not necessarily just the NCAA, but I think sport properties would say you see fan engagement on the rise. So I'm a football guy, don't know much about baseball, but maybe if I'm interested in sports betting on baseball, then now I'm going to start watching it more and start paying attention to MLB Network or whatever it is. So I think fan engagement from a sport property would be one argument that would be, hey, this is a good thing.
So flip side of that, and I'll ask you, Dave, since you helped to usher in sports gambling, what are some of the dangers or the worries or the harms you might think that could come from not just sports gambling, but legalized sports gambling in particular?
Yeah, from legalized sports gambling, man, what the group should understand is in New Jersey, the New Jersey model, which is not copied by every state, it has the highest regulatory demands on the industry than even what the SEC has over trading on stocks. What we do to allow a person to be permitted or a company permitted to come in to offer a product is a vetting of that company in a way that we know more about that individual, more about that company, to ensure that they're suitable to offer a gambling product to the consumer in New Jersey. Beyond that, the demands on them are such that they have to build in cybersecurity protections. Their advertising programs have to be scrutinized to ensure that it's not misleading or violating our laws on consumer protections. Responsible gaming protocols that we built in demand that each operator have dedicated staff who monitor and oversee the play of somebody online. Because if you're gambling online in a legal site, you're not anonymous. We know more about you in order to register, to become available. We know your source of funds. We know where the money's coming from. We know in a regulated environment, every bet you make, every loss you have, every win you have, how much money you made, how much time you're gambling. You know everything. And this is in a online setting, because technology allows you to do things that you can't do in a retail setting. And I can keep on going on other demands that we have on them. And that's why in New Jersey, we've had problems, but we haven't had these terrible scandals. Do we still have people who fall into an addiction? Yes, we do. We do. What are we going to do about that? Brianna and I have talked about this over time. When I first started as director, I went to her groups. She wasn't there yet. Give me your best practices. We'll put them as regulations in the state of New Jersey. Silence. Brianne comes, gave me 25. 23 went in because 2, they weren't gonna work. Brianne, sorry.
Asking
But-
them how many I have now,
Yeah.
guys. It's at 126 now, by the way.
How do I, it's up to 106.
106.
When I retired, it was 85, and I was like, please stop. Would you? I mean, 85
We got
best
6%
practices
of this
just.
population with an addiction, you guys. We got some work
That's
to do.
true. And what I also say, what we did in New Jersey, that others haven't done, and Brianna has to, was part because she identified this, and it was in the law. We make the industry pay for research, evidence-based research. Their data, they pay for it. They share the data with a research university who does the research on problem gambling, responsible gambling best practices. Rutgers University reports are all public. They're issued every year. A little behind schedule right now because they got so much work to do. No researching university in the world has the data that they have from everything that occurs. And from that research then, is wonderful evidence-based research. If you're in a college university, you now have evidence, not hearsay, not innuendo, not complaints, but you now have data that is public and shared and available for people to weigh in on what other regulations, what other best practices need to be put into place to reduce the risks of people who are at risk of falling into an addiction. And what you have to also understand is the sports wagering field, the online sports wagering field, is the only gambling entity legal in the United States that's doing this. No other people are doing it. State lotteries, nothing. State-run gambling. Horse racing, nothing. Retail casinos, very little, if any. So I'm not saying that we're doing it perfect, but you need to overcome this balkanized approach to reform, to protect people who have a mental illness, because it is a mental illness, to fall into an addiction. And a better job needs to be done, but it will only be done for a collaborative, cooperative, and comprehensive way of looking at gambling, not just sports wagering. But I wouldn't say you have to stop. I want sports wagering to still be the lead because everybody thinks that's the biggest problem. I don't disagree. Let's deal with it.
So I hear you saying a lot of the problem, or a lot of the harm, one of the main harms is sort of addictive behavior by a small but not insignificant percentage of people. Are there, just for the other panels, are there other harms we should be thinking about here, in addition to the harm to those who fall into addiction?
I guess Mark can talk about this with, certainly in his area when it deals with the athletes themselves, integrity, the threats they're under, the harassment they might be undergoing, things like that, Mark.
Do you wanna
Yeah,
follow up with- yeah.
thanks, Dave. Yeah, there are certainly some downsides. And one thing I was gonna say is just the ease
Mhm.
as this business has developed in the US. And it's not necessarily illegal, but you could daily fantasy, whatever, but just the ability to do this transaction on your phone for young people, I think that's just that's an issue. Not sure it would be any better if it was not legalized, right? So, but we have to recognize that the ease of gambling today is just so prevalent, especially with young people. But Dave also mentioned integrity issues. So, especially at the Division I level, student athletes are assets to somebody. They're sitting on the ability to win a bet through the manipulation of the contest or providing inside information that could be very, very valuable prior to some line movement. And just that alone is a big time game changer. And I'm sure Dave would say this, and probably has, but that hasn't changed with legalized sports betting. That they were still assets for people in the legal market. So that hasn't changed. But we do have to be cognizant of the fact that these athletes, these young people, are right in that intersection, and they are being approached. There have been young people approached about match manipulation. And if you go back around 50 years, I think it's about 50 years, we did a study I think there have been 17 cases where there have been some type of federal law enforcement action on NCAA sports during that time period. Dwarfs any of the pro leagues, et cetera. And there are probably a lot of different reasons why, but that's part of college sports. It's part of what we're doing. It's part of my role as the regulator, be involved in helping police and ensure there's integrity in those games. And then lastly, the harassment piece. It's not all about sports betting. It's about fans as well, but there is an element. We've done some studies, and we think about 12% of the reported harassment, at least that we know about, is directly tied to sports betting, because in the social media harassment, they're using terms that it's definitive. This is about they've lost a bet. We think the number's probably a little larger, because we're not, if they don't put the word betting in, or you owe me money because I lost or something like, if that's not in there, we don't fully know. But it is a part of the environment, right? People are losing money on student athletes, on coaches, referees. Those participants, those three groups, all face harassment in ways that we really haven't seen before. And it's not unique to the NCAA. The pro leagues are dealing with it as well. So those are certainly some of the downsides.
Didn't you say fan engagement has gone up because of sports betting? So
Yes.
wouldn't increased harassment potentially be linked to that increase in fan engagement? Wasn't catalyst sports betting for the harassment? I mean, Commissioner Silver from the NBA just called for stronger regulations around sports betting as well. So this isn't something unique to the NCAA and the vulnerability of college students, but also the pros. I've had the privilege of working with several pros, some who have been harassed, some who have made poor decisions to bet on themselves or their teammates. And what does that look like? How do we navigate that world? Other things that I see that I think are negative, that are not addiction related, the Speaker of the House of Ohio said something yesterday I thought was powerful. We've reached a saturation point for gambling. We have normalized gambling very quickly within our culture. Sure, gambling's been around since our very first day as a country, right? We used a lottery to fund the Revolutionary War. Talk about it all the time. George Washington loved a good poker game. He told his troops they couldn't play, but he himself was an avid gambler, right? It's a part of our country, but it didn't look and feel and act the way we talk about it today. You weren't having a conversation about this 5 years ago about casinos, were you? Something about sports betting has changed the way we interact and view and talk about gambling. And that has massive implications as a culture, as families, as I would even say religious institutions. They're going through these disputes. How do we feel about gambling? How do we feel about sports betting? But the funniest thing is this debate about, is sports betting gambling? Right? So there's all these interesting debates that are happening, which can be good, but also with here. So those debates may and could have happened before. And then advertising. I can't believe neither of you brought up advertising. Every 13 seconds. I mean, I love the industry in sports betting, but man, nobody would miss those ads if they went away, right? Except for those inducements and promos that lead to that engagement, which leads to addiction. And then lastly, very unsexy topic, but payments. The way payments happen now for your gambling has changed the way we not only interact with it, but the negative consequences of it. There's something called pain of payment that existed once upon a time. You used to use cash at the grocery store. Now you go on Amazon, one click. So who orders more on Amazon? Same applies here because you can sports bet with your credit card.
Yeah, so I see a couple of themes there, but one in particular is this like lack of friction, you might say. The fact that, I mean, I think Mark, you touched on this, the fact that it's in your pocket, the fact that you can do it quickly has made it easier to gamble. And so I want to kind of ask everybody this question because it's an argument I often hear. I kind of suspect I know what you're going to say, but I'm kind of curious. So like the argument is like people have always gambled, right? All that legalization does is like shed some light on it. It gives us some data. It doesn't really change what was happening. It brings what was underground above ground. And now we've got the means to regulate it, to study it. And so there's no real harm here. There's only benefits. I sort of think I know what you're going to say about this, but I'm curious what the views are.
I'll try to take that on because there's no doubt in my mind when we were looking at implementing sports wagering in New Jersey there were two models in place. There was a model of Nevada, which had sports wagering for probably 40 years beforehand. Under PASPA, they were allowed to continue to have it. And then there was what we call the European model, which was just wild, wild west. Man, you come at, they would, whatever they want to offer, they could. So in New Jersey, when we were first looking at this, we went, well, first, we're not going to copy Nevada because they're so buried in the past that it's not going to work. And when you went to countries like England and Australia and France and some of the other countries over there, and they were touting how good they were as regulators, you come back to the office and go, we're in deep trouble, man. We got to come up with a new model. And a lot of what you were talking about here is what we call, what I keep on reference, the New Jersey model. And what it did, not to toot our horn, but we recognized first and foremost, with the power of technology and the power of the internet, and the Apple phone's been around for, at that time, almost 15 years. We predicted 75% of the gambling is going to be online through your phone or computer. We were wrong. It's 90%. So this access to sports wagering, right, in 35 states through your phone was driving sports wagering to degrees that would never have been seen if we didn't have online. Never been seen. Because you could go the old way, you go into a casino, or you go to a racetrack, or maybe go to your state lottery, I don't know, and you buy a lottery ticket for the game tonight. I really don't know. The power of technology, the power of marketing, the individualized and personalized attention to you when you're on your phone. I'm surprised it's only 0.3 seconds. You don't see billboard ads anymore. Do you see anything ads in a magazine or newspaper? Now you might see some predictions. You see the talking heads on TV. You know, oh, I think Indiana's going to win tonight by 10, or I think they're going to lose by 5. Where the real advertising is coming in and where we have to deal with it is the affiliates who are funneling and watching everything that you do on the internet. If you type in the word gambling, I guarantee you're going to get hit up in seconds by the illegals as well as the legal to, hey, if you thought to open an account with us. So when we talk about this, it's where our society is going with e-commerce, where it's going with technology improvements, and can government keep up as a regulator? Can they keep up? And my challenge when I was there is we're slow. In order to get a regulation passed in the state of New Jersey, I'd have to get a year to get it from proposal to implementation. In today's day and age, I'm just lost. So we work with Brianne and the Marks of the world and the DraftKings and FanDuel and say, all right, I license you. I'm going to put this regulation in, but I want you all to agree that you're going to do it as a best practice. Because if you don't, okay, tell me why not. And if you do, I'm going to know that I can at least trust you, even though I have to verify that you're doing it in the future. But at least I know those steps are in to protect consumers. They were in there to try to achieve best practices and do a better job. And they were committed to do things that would give them sustainability in the long term, because they knew their Achilles heel was a scandal with sports wagering or an addiction rate where all of a sudden people were demanding change. And I can't say that we have reached a solid conclusion in that area yet, but the effort was there. And there's so many challenges in this field still, but I drive home the message. You have to look at technology and what's happening in the future to realize that sports wagering was not tethered to technology. We probably wouldn't be seeing as many. We'd see problems, don't get me wrong, but we would be seeing this volume. And my position is, I don't think so. But you can't put the genie back in the bottle. So I told Jeff, today, 2018, did I think that we'd be where we are today in 2025 with what we're facing? No. I was happy to win. I was happy to win. I thought we won 7 years of litigation, and we're going to be the best. We turned it out, be really good. But where we are today, we won the battle. We got a war here before us right now, and we all agree, a lot of work to be done. And if we don't work together, it's not going to be a very pleasant thing for some people.
Just a quick follow-up, Dave. What surprised you the most about where we are?
Yeah.
From where you thought we would be in 2018?
Well, NBA, Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, NCAA fought us tooth and nail. Gambling is wrong. You cannot do that on sports. Integrity, integrity, integrity. You have no way of controlling integrity, and we're going to lose our business model because of scandals. People aren't going to trust us. They want to come to their game. They don't want to go to a football game. Federal government, DOJ, absolutely not. We don't want you to have sports wagering. Today, they've all embraced it. The federal government is engaged in sports wagering now. They just fought us to stop it. Now they're running it. So, and every league and team, as much as Adam says he wants more regulation, well, I don't disagree with him. But his owners are all going to come to him and say, you know, the value of our teams just went from $2 billion a year in 2018 to $4 billion a year. And why is that? Sports wagering, fan engagement, constant advertising, boom. And so the value of their product has expanded significantly. More regulation? Okay. Better regulation? Easy answer. But you think the feds are going to do it?
So-
Last time I looked, they're still closed, right?
Yeah, I think there's.
Yeah, I don't think that's
Unless something happened.
Yeah.
So let me take the devil's advocate position, maybe throw this to Brianne or Mark. So why don't we see that as a great success of sports gambling? Look, it's expanded, people are enjoying it, and what's the evidence that they're enjoying it? Look at all this more fan engagement.
Look at Dave's face. He's like, oh my gosh, you gave Brianne a mic and then you asked her what's going on. I'm not gonna deny his we do work together. We do. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for the legal victory that he achieved. I'm not denying that merit, but what he didn't forecast was my worst nightmare. And the problem is it's getting worse every day. So I'm going to pick on Dave a little bit, only because he has put all my best practices. So think about it this way. So if Dave has the strongest regulatory infrastructure out of all 40 jurisdictions, and he's got close to 100 best practices for problem gambling. So now figure this, 6% of his adult population has a gambling problem. The thought pre-PAFSA was at 1 to 2%. Do you know what that's costing the taxpayers of New Jersey every year to address the social costs? $350 million. You know how much tax revenue they're making? $370 million. So that's a $20 million. Ooh, yay, look at that. We are talking about tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of kids who are being primed to develop an addiction, because the earlier you are exposed and engage with gaming or gambling-like products, the more predisposed you are to developing a problem later in life. Things that happen when you have harms within your communities. Domestic violence goes up. Homelessness goes through the roof. Alcohol, drug abuse, up, up, up. The community and the family infrastructure breaks down. So who is actually profiting off of all this? DraftKings and FanDuel, because we just learned the states are not actually making all that money that was promised to them, because it goes right back out the door to deal with all the social harms. But he's right. The toothpaste is out of the tube. I can't make it go away, and abolishing it isn't going to solve anything. Prohibition of gambling doesn't solve the issues of gambling addiction. It would still be there, but we have to do better, because the longer we allow it to exist at this rate, and remember, he's the best jurisdiction in the US. So what's it like here in Indiana? I can tell you.
They're pretty good.
Oh, they're fine. They have no one struggling with this. Absolutely not. What are you talking about? Young guys, like the ones sitting in this room, are using their credit card and calling mom and dad. I'm sorry, this semester I gambled $5,000. I thought I could make a quick buck. There is an absolute lack of understanding and education that these problems carry risks. We are in our Joe Camel era of sports betting. And the more celebrities I see endorsing this, telling kids it's going to be fine, the more I stay up at night. My 11-year-old asked for the Dueling Fan app because it looked really cool. And in Nickelodeon, he could play a free play with all sports betting picks. So, Mom, what's the harm? Why are you the worst mom ever? Because Mommy knows way too much about the dark side of sports betting. And in those harmless free apps or those harmless ads comes a lot of lives lost.
I
And I
want,
love you, Dave. So thanks for doing that court case for us.
I want to just ask you a little bit about the toothpaste going back in the tube comment. So I get politically why that might be true, but why, given what you've argued here, why not think that would be the best option? So yeah, there's still going to be problem gamblers, but there's going to be way less of them because it's just way less accessible.
But here's the thing, there was this promise made to states. Two things would happen. One, a lot of legalization happened during the time of COVID. So what was happening during COVID, budgets were decimated. States were desperate for money to just magically fall out of the sky. And guess what, you guys? DraftKings and FanDuel and everyone else brought that to the table. So politically speaking, states have no choice. They are now reliant. See, the problem with gambling is that people feel really iffy about it, right? It kind of sits in our stomach and it's just one of those things we don't know what to think about. And so often, in 100% of instances in the US, we have needed to legalize gambling if it allowed for something that was of value to us. Example, in Colorado, we only pass gambling bills if it funds clean water. Because in Colorado, that is very important to them. Minnesota, their wildlife, their parks. The only way a gambling bill gets passed is if the revenue goes to wildlife. You see where I'm going? So now imagine being a policymaker and I outlay all these problems. And then I'm going to say, do you really want that clean water? We're going to just make the gambling addiction problems go away and we'll have to figure it out. It's not realistic. It's just not how the world works. It's the issue with the way we pass gambling laws. It's not about the gambling products. It's not about addiction. It's a heavily reliance that gambling is justified to us because it funds something we need or we want.
It could even go further than that, in that the forms of gambling that historically preceded sports wagering and casinos, like state lotteries, 50-50 raffles, horse racing. If you buy a lottery ticket, I bet the majority of people buying a lottery ticket, they don't think they're gambling.
That's right.
Go to a horse race, watch a horse race. Well, it's a failing industry, except in maybe Kentucky, but the number of racetracks is down to, I think, around 250 in the country. People, they don't think they're gambling. Oh, betting on a horse race, you know? Now, you could bet on horse racing through the internet because they started that probably 20 years ago, but it's just not exciting to watch on a regular basis compared to, sports. And, when you have your local fundraiser where you buy a 50-50 raffle ticket and 50% of the money goes to your charity and the rest goes to the winner, people don't think they're gambling. So your point on education is truly a valid one because I see that, and Mark can probably talk about this more than anybody about the NCAA, but the age group that's here in colleges and universities, they're not as smart about the risks of gambling, the challenges of gambling, the data analytics that are against you by the House or by somebody who's offering things that, you're engaging in it if you're over 21, hopefully. Because you're excited by it. You want to have fun. You find it entertaining. it stays that way, you're good. 95%, maybe 94% of the people don't have a problem. Hopefully you're in that group. Well, my other point is why, and we don't know this, and more research needs to be done. Why does that 6% of the people of the population in New Jersey that's been reported by Rutgers, right? Why are they at risk of addiction? What is it about their behavior? What is it about their experiences? What is it about their values? What is it? I mean, is it really a medical condition that you can overcome? I don't know. I don't know the research on that. I'm just saying that if we don't look at this in the future from our values, our ethical values, it's not going to go away. You should really just hope and pray it's going to go away. Good luck with that. So, Mark, here you want to talk about the youth as you see it. Certainly the most high-risk group of people who gamble are those who are just starting to engage in it. And that's your age group, 18 to 21.
Yeah,
And you started when you're 16, but 18 to 21 is really the at-risk group right now.
Yeah, the studies that we have seen, I mean, you probably know more about the actual studies, but that student athletes are 2 to 3 times more at risk than their adult counterparts. Partly their age, but the other is they're athletes. They're competitive. They know sports. They're interested in a topic. So we're concerned as a national office about the ramifications on sports betting on this particular population.
Mm-hmm.
So 20% of 18 to 24-year-olds in New Jersey have a gambling problem. And so this is where the friction really comes in, that ethical question. Is it the person? Is this something that you're vulnerable and have a disease? Or did the product cause it?
Or a combination of both.
Or is it a combination
We
of
don't
both? And that's where we need to be going.
Okay.
Because for a very long time, the narrative, you've probably heard of responsible gaming, it often gets accused of putting all the onus and the ownership on the player. We'll just manage your bankroll better and you won't have an addiction. Hello, this is common sense, right? That was kind of the narrative. But actually, that's not the whole picture, right? We know that push notifications and behavioral nudges and the ease for which you can gamble all factor into someone developing a problem. It is not binary. This simply cannot be, well, the consumer just needs to manage their play better and be responsible. There is still more that needs to be understood about the design and the deployment. There's this very famous researcher out of NYU, Natasha Dowshall. She has this book called Addiction by Design. And it talks about how slot machines, from the way you sit down in the comfort of your chair, and now I can actually charge my cell phone while I'm playing on the slot machine, and the drinks, right? All of those factors about the way you feel when you go into a casino apply to the design from the moment you check your app. Did you know that the industry says that the average consumer, checks their sports betting app 210 times
A day?
a day?
Wow.
Right. Look at Roose's. Like, I didn't even think I checked my phone that much. So if I'm checking my sports betting app that much, how many times are we going on our phone? And what about every behavioral nudge you get when you open that app? Right? The National Consumer League is calling for a ban on push notifications. Why? Because they work.
Yes, I think this leads to that question that, Mark, you started us with, that kind of question about how paternalistic do we want to be? Whose responsibility is it? Because you could say it's my responsibility not to sit down in the comfy slot chair, right?
Sure.
All the way to like the casino has some responsibility, the sports book, the NCAA, higher ed institutions, right? Where just briefly, because I want to get to some audience questions too. Where do you kind of come down on that? Where's the responsibility lie here? Okay.
I'll start. At least for us at the NCAA, I don't know if there's a great answer. I mean, it is the great debate that our schools are having right now, which is what's the role of the national office, but what's the role of regulation? So kind of doubling down over here. Historically, a regulation would be if you're a student athlete or a staff member, and you're engaged in sports betting, then you'd essentially be suspended from your job, you're suspended from competition. But now we're starting to look at, is that really the best way to handle it, especially if we have some concern that people have a problem. Maybe there's intervention from a mental health perspective. We have to draw the line somewhere. And for us, that's the bright line is integrity. So not betting on yourself, which by the way, is super easy now to bet on your own prop bet. And we have seen that. We're seeing that where student athletes are trading information with one another about their own prop bets. So that even outside Charlie's harassment thing, this is just literally the ability to bet on yourself because you've got it on your phone really quickly. So we got that on one hand and we draw the line there, but now we're starting to look at, are there better ways, mental health things that we can do to intervene here as opposed to just traditional punishment, ramifications. So I think what you asked earlier, what we've done since 2018, like I think the NCAA has changed. We still don't offer advertising during our championship event, so you won't see it. There are no plans to do that anytime soon. We don't have marketing deals with sports wagering companies. The leagues all do. We're still a little bit different there. We're higher ed, right? What we don't do is control schools locally. So there's no prohibition that we would have a control to stop Indiana University going into a deal with FanDuel. You saw a little bit of that very early, I think 4 institutions. It backfired for a lot of different reasons. And so right now, at least, you don't see schools engaging in marketing deals with the sports betting operators. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but we've come a long way and evolved. But I think how we handle evidence of sports betting and what that role is from a national office versus what school's role is, mental health, similar to gambling or alcohol on campus, that type of thing. I think we'll see that play out over time, but that question is just now being asked. What's our role?
Like in New Jersey, one of the first things we did with colleges and universities in our law, we made it very clear that in sports wagering, that in New Jersey, you could not place a wager on any collegiate school that was in New Jersey. So for example, Rutgers is in the Big Ten. No wagering in New Jersey on Rutgers University, no matter where it played in any place in the world. If Ohio State and Indiana played for a championship in the state of New Jersey, no wagering on that game. So about 20 states have copied that standard to deny any wagering on the event or any player or any prop, anything associated with your in-state schools or out-of-state schools that come into your state. I think it's been positively received, but you still deal with actions in my schools in New Jersey that I look at them and go, why are you doing this? Or why aren't you doing this? A good example, William Hill, big operator at the time, Post Rutgers University, will pay you $200,000 a year to put our banner up in your stadium in Piscataway, New Jersey. As a regulator, I made it real clear at Rutgers. You take that, I'm calling you forward. I'm going to license you. Every board member is going to have to submit all their financials to me, and we're going to see if they're suitable to be engaged in the gambling industry. That didn't go over real well with our counsel, who was an ex-attorney general, who called me and said, "You can't do that." And I said, "Take me to court. Let's see how it plays out, because I don't think you're going to win. And if you do, you're going to lose in the court of public opinion." So you need to have people understand that when you're regulating the industry, you need to build in friction. Okay, friction is not bad. Slow things down. But I don't know in some of the things we do how we can slow down the speed that is out there today because of technology. So we have to adapt the technology to counter it. And that we have to have the same power and technology as regulators overseeing contests, helping those who are in need, that the industry has. And that is a tough road to haul when you're a public governmental agency. Okay. And the way you get it, you build in friction, or you make the industry pay for your resources to do what you need to do. It's not easy. It's not easy. And so you asked the question, how do we get there? We're all We should be together. We have to collaborate. We better coordinate. I keep using the word comprehensive approach because I fully believe that sports wagering, again, tip of the iceberg, driving the dialogue today. Legal sports wagering, driving the dialogue today. Will that be true 5 years from now? Or will it be some all new entity coming in and offering things through the internet that we don't know about?
I was gonna say, you're just being nice. I call it the Trojan horse. I think sports betting is the Trojan horse for iGaming, a casino in your pocket.
Oh, I agree. I mean, it's- but because
Oh, no, I
for
can take
one
that.
reason,
What did I
you know
say?
what the reason is.
Revenue, money, tax revenue. That's
More
what it
than
is.
that.
You're talking
More than operator money.
operator money. That's
There's
right.
more money can be made on an online casino than an online sports wagering in a heartbeat.
So,
I can prove it. Look at the numbers in New Jersey.
yeah, we can all prove, there's like 7 states that have it. It's insane. Like the numbers are out of control. If you think the handle and the revenue you're seeing from sports betting is big, you haven't seen anything yet. iCasino makes sports betting look like a non-figure in budget.
Only 7 states yet.
Only 7. I'm gonna keep it that way,
But
you guys.
15 states have what we call iLottery.
Yes?
Go to an iLottery state, go online, 24/7 gambling, and you tell me what's the difference between what they're offering as a state entity. Come to New Jersey and see what we offer. Put them side by side, flip them around in cups a few times, you pick one out, I guarantee you they're the same.
Do you want me to answer the paternalistic question? Because
Yeah, sure.
this is where I sound like a mom in the room.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear you answer
I
that.
am a
And
mom.
then we'll open up
It's
to
like my favorite
questions.
time.
But I just wanted to say, I think one thing, Dave, that you brought up there that I think is important is that even if we answer the paternalism question, like who's responsible, you raised the important point that it might be hard to actually act as the parental entity here
Absolutely.
because things are changing so
It's
quickly.
just, it's.
Yeah.
Good point.
But yeah, I'd love to hear your answer,
Well,
Brianna, and then we'll open up for questions.
So not every state has legalized sports betting, let's be clear. There are still some really big markets that haven't moved, California, Texas, Georgia. And when we go to those states and we're lobbying for the policies, a lot of times the argument is, well, people are doing it anyway. There's this illegal market, there's this market that you could capture. And I disagree. When you ask whose responsibility is it, I disagree that policy should be made by the bad actions of a few bad people. I really don't think that's how Americans have made their policies. I think that if you tell me people really want sports betting, that is a whole different conversation than people are doing it illegally. So we should profit off of this. And also, there's never been research to show that the people who are betting illegally are going to be captured by the legal market, because the legal market's never going to be able to compete with the illegal market, which doesn't pay taxes, has no stringent consumer protections, and there's no consequences if they don't hold up to their end of the bargain, right? So what we have to talk about is who's responsible. All right, if you as a state want to welcome these businesses into your state confines, and whose responsibility is it, and how transparent are you going to be with people that they may become addicted to this? And it may not be their own doing, it could be the result of the industry practices. It's definitely not binary, and it's definitely not on one side. But again, we live in the pragmatic world where we have to keep up. And so it's happening. It's just who's going to be willing to fall on the sword when things don't go well.
Thank you very much. I think to me, this is such an interesting issue because it starts with sports gambling and it turns into a question about paternalism, about public health, about addiction, and about the sort of technological advances we're going to see around all sorts of financial instruments, not just gambling. So this has been really interesting. We're going to have a Q&A with the audience here. So, but first, please join me in thanking our panelists here. I'm going to act as talk show host and wander around here to see if there's any questions. So I'll bring you the microphone. I know it's a smallish room, but we'll still use the mic. Any questions here for our panelists?
Hi, my name's Walker. I'm a sophomore economics major. First of all, thank you all for being here. This has been a really cool discussion to just listen to. My question would be, is there any push to legalize sports gambling at the federal level. Brianna, I'm sure that would make your job a lot easier in regulating everything all at once.
Yeah, so there is a proposed piece of legislation. It's called the Safe Bet Act. It's been filed by Representative Tonko and Senator Blumenthal, New York and Connecticut. How it would work is it would stand up a new department under the DOJ where states would go and receive approval to continue forward with allowing the sports betting that they have passed. So every state has a different version of sports betting and how, right, from its tax structure to regulations. So I would say this is minimal at best. It also has zero chance of passing. It's two Democrats. There is no appetite for this. There is another piece of legislation at the federal level that I am behind, actually two. It's called the GRIT Act. This is not regulating sports betting, but it does take the sports betting excise tax. So there's a federal excise tax on every sports bet. And it would take half of the revenue, goes right now into just the general federal fund, and it would create the first ever gambling addiction department under SAMHSA and NIH, so we could finally get some research and investment in addressing the social harms. It too has 0% chance of passing. It's right now we are in an era of deregulation. We are in an era of scaling down health and human services and addiction grants at the federal level. The political appetite is truly not there. We could talk all night about the prediction markets, which are allowing sports contracts, which are being authorized at the federal level. So in some ways, Dave and Mark and I would argue the federal government is choosing to regulate sports betting, but when we call it regulate, right, did you see his eyes? They're not doing anything. So yeah, it would make my job a lot easier. We just have to understand that gambling's never been regulated at the federal level, ever. And it's gonna be a real hard lift.
It would take a significant action by Congress to pass such a law. I agree with Brianne. It's not gonna happen in this administration. The reverse is happening in this administration. The federal government is engaged in sports wagering. Okay, not regulating it. For those who wanna look at it, go on site, look at Kalshi, KALSHI.com. If you're 18 years old, you can put a bet down tonight. Okay?
Dave, let's not encourage betting.
I know.
College students, did you hear my stat?
And Go to
20%.
crypto.com, Robinhood. I saw a sign the other day, day trading is fun. Day trading is fun. What's that about? You know, there is a risk there, but, I mean, this is your federal government at work right now. They, even in the best of times, the federal government would be hard pressed to develop a regulatory model for this country for sports wagering, any form of gambling. They'd have to hire probably every gaming regulator in every state and gear up to have at least 4,000 or 5,000 employees with a FBI and Justice Department criminal division of another 1,000. I can do it. I can do it. Okay. And, it's Adam Silver, as you read, he said, well, I'd like to see a federal regulatory model. It was Charlie Baker, who was the governor of Massachusetts. He's talked about a federal regulatory model. It's not going to happen. It's just, you're not dealing with the real issues. Okay. And, it's a feel-good talking point that the media picks up on. And then where's the action plan to engage in the needed steps to deal with the matters that are critical to the consumer and the patron and those who need assistance today. And the states are acting. It's a challenge for them too, because you're also finding today that in our federalist society, more and more costs of operating a state government are being pushed down to the states. And many states are, certainly on the East Coast where I come from, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, Washington DC, New York, the budget deficits that they're experiencing to just provide the core services that are critical to them now, they're going to be in trouble. They're going to be in trouble in the future finding that money. You've got to either find new sources of revenue from any source, or you're going to have to cut costs substantially. Those are challenges that, are not gambling related, but I guarantee you, states will look first to gambling to pay more money. So, New Jersey, we had a tax rate of 15% on sports wagers. What they do last session, raised it to 20. Boom, more money. So gambling is always an easy element to tax. I agree with Brianna. There's going to be states that are going to be looking at new ways of gambling and building in tax rates to bring in more revenue. But it's very narrow-minded if you don't commit to effective regulation or dealing with the consequences of those who can't successfully handle these new, what I call freedoms. Some people can't handle it. And people get upset with me for using that word, but it is. You have a choice.
I do say something though about the federal regulation. So if a lot of parallels are drawn between gambling and tobacco. I don't believe that they are the same. There's no scenario where any of us could take in tobacco and our lungs not be harmed. Actually, you could have some tobacco and I'm going to be harmed, right? But if the industry keeps acting like big tobacco, distinction, not the same, but acting like big tobacco, that could be the ultimate course for federal regulation and reaction. When the industry is brave enough to hire someone like me to get my thoughts about how things are going, right? I keep saying, stop denying harm. This is becoming a problem. The more you deny and say, oh, the harm's in the illegal market, not over here. No, that's not true. Why did the tobacco industry fall? Because what do? They lied, they concealed all the harm from the products. So I draw the parallel to the feds coming in and taking over like they did tobacco if the industry keeps acting like big tobacco. And I hope, I don't know, you guys, the prediction markets have flipped everything from like yesterday morning to today with the NHL. But I'm hopeful the industry will see its wrongdoings and clean itself up before the feds come in.
Thanks. Got another question here.
Thanks, everyone. So I'm Dave Holliday. I work at the Brindle Institute, and I'm a philosopher, which means although I like sports, I'm not very good at them. And I don't gamble because I don't make enough money to be able to afford it. But I have a question for Mark about so one of the sort of benefits of the upsides is, on the sports side, is increased engagement. My question is sort of two parts. First, is it good engagement? Is it the right kind of engagement? And secondly, especially from a college sports, from a pro sports perspective, am I right in thinking that the engagement's going to be very uneven? It's going to be all on the big sports, so, football, maybe some soccer, basketball, baseball. It's not going to be on track. It's not going to be on water polo. It's going to be way more in men's sports than women's sports. Way more on sort of headline ESPN things than the smaller sports. So first, is the engagement generally of the right kind for people watching sports for the wrong reasons maybe, or is it actually triggering genuine engagement for sports? And secondly, are you seeing that very uneven engagement such that it's all going to certain programs in sports and not at all to others?
Yeah, I'll be brief. I'll answer you for your second question first. I do think it'll be uneven. I think it already is. We're seeing revenue grow in revenue sports and the Olympic sports, non-revenue sports certainly kind of being left on the side. So I think that's pretty clear. It's what you see on TV. As far as whether it's good engagement or not, my guess is it depends on who you ask. I mean, some will probably say yes, the viewer numbers in certain sports are through the roof. And so some would argue that that's good, right? Whether that's the right engagement or not, I'm not sure. Long term, I do think there's an opportunity to build fandom in sports that have been passed up. Baseball's probably one I think about, like people playing fantasy baseball, engaging that from a statistics standpoint, then some of them will end up being fans of baseball longer term and watch it. So I think that probably happens, but it's anecdotal, but I get there are a lot of people who are watching sports through the whole game now because they're betting on the next thing in the game. So, and we haven't really talked about, but micro betting is also a really, really big thing. It's a big trend. I think it's not going anywhere either. But I was talking to one company where there's 2,000 bets per MLB game that you can make on that game. Because you can bet on pitches, you can bet on where the ball's going to get hit. It's not just who's going to win the game. So there are all these things that kind of keep you in the action throughout the game. Drives revenue dollars up now I can say that the fan engagement extends the whole length of the game. So now I can advertise in the later innings. It's worth more money because I know more people are going to watch it. So depends on who you ask. The marketing people, I think they'd say, this is awesome, but
To put a finer point on things, Korean table tennis, US fan engagement has never been higher, especially in the great state of Colorado, where 80% of their sports betting revenue comes from middle of the night micro betting on Korean table tennis.
probably not the right fan engagement.
My money's on no, but I too don't make a lot of money with it.
I feel like I should have micro bets for my lectures. I'd have that off
There's a thought,
engagement would be
put it
good.
on call sheet.
We probably got a chance for one or two more questions. Are there any questions from any students here? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Declan. I'm a sophomore. I wanted to ask if you think there should be regulations on sports gambling apps that are accessible to younger kids. I don't know if you guys know what Flip is, but kind of like sports gambling apps that give younger people free money to gamble with, and kind of just get them familiar with sports gambling system.
So with the flips, so sweepstakes, so all the work we're doing for sweepstakes.
You just threw a underhand pitch right up here.
Right up here, right here, ready? Let's go. David, I'll tell you, I'm taking it down.
Again, this is another form of internet-based gambling called sweepstakes. A year ago, I was in Las Vegas.
We go there a lot, you guys would be
It
shocked.
was the number one topic of concern in the gaming industry, the sweepstakes contests that essentially were being defined as not gambling. But the end result was, at the end, you're gambling on the result of sports or even a casino game. Again, go back to what I said earlier, it takes states a little time to react. You have an aggressive attorney general or somebody like me who said, go get them now. It's gambling, file injunction, disgorgement, get them. Non-aggressive at the AG says, our law's not strong enough, we're gonna lose that case. I don't care. You lose the case, you go to the legislature and we'll pass the law and make it stronger. Nobody's gonna support this as not being gambling. Fast forward a year later, took New Jersey a year to pass a law that banned sweepstakes. Today, sweepstakes gambling is still existing in probably half the states in the nation, but half the states have acted to essentially kill it through a state law or to have attorney general's actions to essentially chase them out because you go after their suppliers, their vendors, but it still exists. My point being, and yours, it exists. And I don't know if it exists in Indiana or not. Sweepstakes still here.
They're here.
But Indiana will be act because they have a strong sense of doing things. It just takes time. So again, sweepstakes, daily fantasy sports, online sports, all these forms of new wagering that didn't exist legally in the last 6 or 7 years all exist today for one reason: the internet. Access, delivery of the product immediately, technology, data elements, this, you watch TV, like you said, the game. You watch a baseball game or a football game, you can't get through those games without data analytics coming into play and showing you things that you never even thought about. Well, this running back was just at 22.5 miles per hour for the last run. Do you really care? That's a gambling issue. It's going to be something out there. How fast was Barkley running on his last touchdown run? No weekend. So data and technology to deliver this quickly, to trade on or gamble on, is just, you have to understand this is occurring, and it never occurred previously because we didn't have online sports gambling legally. And even the offshore sites, they didn't do this type of micro wagering back then.
So this is the one time that advocates like myself and the industry agree on something. Now, the legal sports betting industry doesn't want sweeps because they're crouching in on the market, right? We pay taxes, we go through vetting, get out of here. Why don't I like it? I don't like it because there's no minimum age. I don't like it because parents allow their kids to do this and they rack up all this debt and they have no comprehension that this was gambling and that their brain, which isn't yet fully formed until 25, is now predisposed to having other addictions and issues.
35 for men.
My brain, it formed at 25.
20 probably.
It's one of those cases where sweepstakes has really gotten the attention of both public health advocates and the industry alike. In fact, it's a great question and very timely because just this week, the largest state penned and signed into law a piece of legislation that will pretty much take out the entire sweepstakes industry. So Gavin Newsom in California signed a law. And the Fliffs of the world, which, by the way, are featured on CBS and on other programs that I've been on, where it says, I'll sit down with a young gentleman like yourself and we'll be talking about how you participate in gaming, fantasy, and I'll get a lot. I couldn't get on FanDuel, but I did get on Fliff, right? You guys heard that? You're probably very familiar with this. You probably all have been able to have accounts, right? So yeah, we are working very hard to either ban them or increase at least the minimum age and to be more transparent about things like age and risks and all the things that should go into these sites.
Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks to you, the audience, for some good questions and for being here tonight. Thanks to our panelists. I'll ask you to thank them in just a moment, but also we're going to put a QR code up on the screen. There's a couple in the back. It's a little survey about tonight's event and what you might want to see in the future from this Courageous Conversations series. So please do that if you have a chance to. But last, please join me in thanking our panelists.
Sorry, I didn't recognize I might be a really old one.